right, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. And I know I discussed this in a previous video, my part 1 video on authority. And you don't have to have watched that one to watch this one. It's not a big deal if you haven't seen it, and you can go back and watch it after this live chat. So I just wanted to talk about, hopefully everybody can hear me all right in the chat. And basically, what does the Bible say about this, but also the law of attraction, which I think is basically the Torah, the word that the Bible was, or the world was created by. You know, it's not a Bible, it's the law of the land, the law of attraction. So basically, that's what we're governed by, and that really is the authority, which is why I mentioned in my other video about the lake of fire, which is a mirror. If you haven't seen my stuff on the Essene mirrors, you can watch that too. But basically, I just want to discuss the verses in the Bible that talk about authority, respecting authority. And like I said in the previous video, I was discussing why people reject authority, basically. And in this video, I want to do the opposite side and just sort of discuss why the Bible talks about respecting authority. And there are a lot of people who would just say that the Bible was written so that you would be a servant, a slave to the government. And they will sort of just say that the verses that I'm going to be reading are basically put in there by people who want you to be submissive to the government. And I am just going to basically say in this video that that is not the case. I've discussed previously why I don't believe the Bible is a tool to keep us as a slave to authority. And it actually teaches the opposite. It teaches freedom. So, in this video, I just want to discuss why basically the Bible does say to submit to authority and to pray for authority and to live under the guidance of authority. And it says this so that we can be free. And so I want to discuss that, and people would say that's a contradiction, but it's not, as long as we understand the law of attraction. So I'm going to discuss that in this video this morning. Hi, everybody in the chat. And all right, so I'm going to just sort of go through some of the Bible verses that discuss authority and respecting authority, and then I'll discuss why it's actually freeing and a good thing and not a negative thing, and they're not contradictory to each other. So 1 Peter 2:13, submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake. And of course, the Lord is Yahweh. So for Yahweh's sake, we're supposed to submit to every ordinance of man. So if there is a police officer saying, you have to obey this law, you are supposed to submit to that law for Yahweh's sake, not for your own sake, not for, the authorities' sake, etc. It's for Yahweh's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme, and that would, of course, be our president in this case in the United States, etc. Go on. Or unto governors, as unto them that are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them that do well. For so is the will of God, that with well-doing ye may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. As free, and not using your freedom for a cloak of maliciousness, but as the servants of God, honor all men. Love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the froward. For this is thankworthy. If a man for conscience towards God endure grief, suffering wrongfully, for what glory is it if, when ye are buffeted for your faults, ye shall take it patiently? I've actually discussed why the law of attraction is biblical, and you can see my video on that. I think I put it in the description box below. So this channel discusses the law of attraction a lot because it is biblical. It's basically the word that the Bible, the world was created by. So that's why the golden rule is in there and everything. So anyway, you can see my videos on that previously, but if you don't like that and you don't think it's biblical, then you can leave and not listen to my channel, because that's basically what I'm going to be talking about in this video. So if you're not into that, then you don't have to watch. Continuing on here. Where was I? For even hereunto were ye called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that ye should follow his steps. So Christ went forward and he let the authority kill him. And we are supposed to do the exact same thing, be able to walk in the same footsteps of Christ. So there's a lot of people out there who would say, if the authority is coming after you and they're wrong for accusing you of doing this or that, that law is wrong. And they would say, according, to like the last video, the other people, they would say, reject all authority and just do what you want to do. And that would be wrong if you're supposed to be following in the footsteps of Jesus, who actually submitted to the authority that he was under. So that's basically the point of this passage in 1 Peter. And of course, Peter was also known as Kepha in the Nazarene Acts and everything. So I take what he says a lot to heart, and I can see why. We are supposed to follow in Christ's footsteps. He even said that, you're supposed to do everything that I did, carry your cross, etc. That's the whole point. Carrying your cross is going forward and submitting to authority completely. So there's a lot of people out there who would say, reject all authority because Jesus, except that's the opposite of what he said. He said, respect the authority, go underneath it, even to the point of death. And that is how you become his disciple, by doing what he did. Continuing on in Mark 12:13. And they send unto him certain of the Pharisees and of the Herodians to catch him in his words. And when they were come, they say unto him, Master, we know that thou art true, and carest for no man. For thou regardest not the person of men, but teachest the way of God in truth. Is it lawful to give tribute to Caesar or not? Shall we give, or shall we not give? But he, knowing their hypocrisy, said unto them, Why tempt ye me? Bring me a penny, that I may see it. And they brought it. And he said unto them, Whose is the image and superscription? And they said unto him, Caesar's. And Jesus answering said unto them, Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And they marveled at him. I'm sorry, I'm reading the stuff that Minister of Yahushua HaMashiach wrote here. Ezra 7:26, and all that is not to be worshipped by the Lord is your God, and the judge is the one who is going to be a slave to us, so that he may become a servant from us, and they will die. I'm not really understanding the point here. So I'm just going to continue on. Try to stay on topic, unless you're chatting amongst yourselves for some reason. Continuing on here, 1 Timothy 2:1. I exhort, therefore, that first of all supplications, prayers, intercessions, and giving of thanks be made for all men, for kings, and for all that are in authority, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. For this is good and acceptable in the sight of God our Savior, who will have all men to be saved and to come to the knowledge of truth. So, we are supposed to be praying for those who are in charge of us, the authorities, the kings, the presidents, etc. A lot of people today will say that you're not supposed to be praying for those who are in authority over you. A lot of them will just say this stuff was added or something like that, and not to trust it. But it's not weird for us to be praying for those who are over us, even if we consider the people over us to be very evil. Because Matthew 5:38 discusses this. We're supposed to pray for those who use us, and for those who we would see as our enemy. So I'll read from Matthew 5:38 here. Ye have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if any man will sue thee at the law, and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. And whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Give to him that asketh thee, and from him that would borrow of thee, turn not thou away. Ye have heard it hath been said, Thou shalt love thy neighbor, and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and the unjust. For if ye love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the publicans do the same? And if ye salute your brethren only, what do ye more than others? Do not even the publicans do so? But be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. Good morning, Janet. I'm glad to see everybody in the chat today. So here it's talking about how we're supposed to be giving away our cloak. If somebody asks for it, give it to them. If somebody is going to hit you, turn the other cheek. And I'll discuss this a little bit further in this video about how that's not necessarily meaning you're being submissive to the point of you're the slave, they're the master, etc. But it's actually going against the person who did so, but just doing it non-violently. So I'll discuss that a little further on just later here. And this is also in the Didache, or the Didache. So the Didache was sort of given out to the early Christians, early followers of Jesus or Yehoshua. And so I'm going to read from this. This is their instructions originally, very early on. There are two ways, one of life and one of death, but a great difference between the two ways. The way of life, then, is this. First, you shall love God who made you. Second, love your neighbor as yourself, and do not do to another what you would not want done to you. That's the law of attraction, as I discussed earlier. And of these sayings, the teaching is this. Bless those who curse you and pray for your enemies, and fast for those who persecute you. For what reward is there for loving those who love you? Do not Gentiles do the same? But love those who hate you, and you shall not have an enemy. Abstain from fleshly and worldly lusts. If someone strikes your right cheek, turn to him the other also, and you shall be perfect. If someone impresses you for 1 mile, go with him 2. If someone takes your cloak, give him also your coat. If someone takes from you what is yours, ask it not back, for indeed you are not able. Give to everyone who asks you, and ask it not back. For the Father wills that to all should be given of your own blessings free gifts. Happy is he who gives according to the commandment, for he is guiltless. Woe to him who receives, for if one receives who has not need, he is guiltless. But he who has need, if one receives who has need, he is guiltless. But he who receives not having need shall pay the penalty, why he received and for what. And coming into confinement, he shall be examined concerning the things which he, And coming into confinement, he shall be examined concerning the things which he has done, and he shall not escape from there until he pays back the last penny. And also concerning this, it has been said, let your alms sweat in your hands until you know to whom you should give. So, let's see here. I would love to have the scripture that you have as proof that there is the law of attraction after this live chat program. Sent me the info, and then I will get back to you with my answer. As I said, I believe that's in the description box, my video on that. Yeah. Law of attraction, as within, so without, as above, so below. Is this even biblical? And so this is that, the video on that. And Janet was saying that she desires to live in a way that doesn't harm others. Paying taxes means I support the slaughter of others through war and abortion. And I discussed that in my previous video a little bit, and that's kind of what I wanted to discuss in this video. Basically, there are very many people who object to where their taxes go, but we are told that we are supposed to just pay if somebody asks for it. And that's what it's talking about here. If somebody is asking for your money, you're supposed to give it to them. If they are going through force to require that money, or else they'll put you in jail, etc., that's the sort of thing. You give it to them. By you giving it to them, you are giving your own blessings or free gifts. It's not like the Father is going to bless you for just giving when you're asked for it. The responsibility is not upon you for where that money is going. The commandments, if the government is basically asking for money and it's going to use it in negative ways, they are the ones who are under the penalty. They are the ones who have done something wrong. It's not you who's done something wrong by giving money to the government and they'll use it for whatever they want to use it for. And so I know that that's hard for some people to take and understand, but it's basically the way that they saw it. Like I said, Jesus said, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. The money, the cash, the dollars, etc., that's all the government's. It's not, God's. God is more of a frequency that has nothing to do with money. And so when he's talking about giving unto Caesar what is Caesar's, Jesus didn't need money. He didn't go around worrying about money. People came to him with things that he would require or need, or he'd have the food that they would eat, etc. By what they did, there was an ability for them to have food just as the birds have food, and they don't have to worry about where they're going to get it from. And our Father will just sort of provide us with the food, and it's not about that. It's not about the money with our Father. The cash that we have is put out there by, Caesar in a way. It's put out there by the government, and it goes back to the government. We give him what, they gave us, etc. And it's a manifestation, and I don't think it's going to last in the Millennium Kingdom. I think that's why Bitcoin and cryptocurrency was created, basically. I think that was a move of the Spirit in some way for those cryptocurrency decentralized, forms of payment that have nothing to do with cash. But until we're there, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. But that's why I do like to have the whole donation thing in cryptocurrencies if somebody wants to donate that way, and the Truth or Talk thing, I accept cryptocurrencies there too, because it is not based on a government, but until we're completely off the grid. Okay, Janet was saying, I guess my perspective right now is nothing truly belongs to Caesar, lol, it's all the Father's. Yeah, well, our Father's the one who, it's the Spirit, and like the products, like a phone and a book and bread and food, etc., the products are the manifestations of the Spirit of the Father. And sometimes we get them through the cash, and yeah, so it is our Father's authority or ultimate rule originally, but he understands that he's the one who put Caesar in charge of us. He's the one who put the United States in charge of us. The United States in charge of us right now, or wherever country you're living in, your government right now was put there by God, by the Spirit, by us, by the law of attraction. When we have failed morally as a country, we will receive moral failures as a leader. When we have started taking back our morality, we will get better leaders for our country. That's the law of attraction. If you are doing this, you will receive that back. If you are a good moral country, you will receive a good moral leader. If you are a bad immoral country, you will receive a bad immoral leader. And based upon how the country is doing every single day, I bet you it changes our leader, because he's a reflection, he's a manifestation. Donald Trump is a manifestation of our country, spiritual frequency. So, our leader is a manifestation of our spiritual frequency. And I'm going to get into that here too, because in the past, the same thing happened. That's why they went into captivity. Whenever they were immoral, they got led into captivity. Whenever they repented, they were led out of captivity. So you can see us in this country. If you see what our country is like, if you see it as a negative thing, then that is a reflection of how you're feeling inside. If you feel like you're being controlled by somebody, it's a reflection of feeling controlled in your frequency, etc. If you feel like you're the one who has the power and they work for you in some sense, it's because you've understood that you have control over your reality. If you inside, in the kingdom of heaven that is inside of you, can fix your insides, your vision of the world, of the country, etc., will change to be fixed in the way that you like it. So we have the power, we have the freedom. And so I'm just going to try to continue on with this, but then, like I said, if you have any questions or comments or things like that, you can bring that up, and I'll get into that. But I'm going to try to continue on here. I discussed the Didache, and this is an interesting part about turning the other cheek here. So this article, actually, I'll leave the link in the description box, and I'll leave it below too. So I'm just going to read a little bit from this article. Defiance, not compliance, turning the other cheek. And this goes for the same thing with the other sayings, with the, I forget what the other sayings were, and I just read it. Turn the other cheek. Sorry. Well, now I don't even know where it is. Well, anyway, turning the other cheek, and also giving the cloak there and the coat and all that stuff. It's and going the other mile, etc. If somebody asks you to go 1 mile, it's all a matter of the same principle. And I read that somewhere, but I don't remember where it is for the other two examples. But all right, this is from Leah Watkiss. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. This quote from the Sermon on the Mount is often shortened to the cliché, turn the other cheek. It is a convenient excuse for inaction, a rationalization for being passive and accepting whatever injustices or unfair treatment we witness or experience. It is the equivalent of saying just ignore them, with the naive hope that whatever or whoever it is will just go away. I used to wonder how Jesus, lover of truth and doer of justice, could tell us to just sit back and accept lies and injustice in this manner. But then I was introduced to Dr. Walter Wink's Exegesis on the Sermon on the Mount, in Jesus and Nonviolence, a Third Way, and my life has never been the same. Well, that might be an interesting book, because that probably discusses the other two ways that I was talking about. Wink starts his exegesis by looking at the phrase, do not resist an evildoer. He explains that a more accurate translation of this sentence is, do not retaliate against violence with violence, or don't react violently against the one who is evil. This subtle yet powerful shift in language sets a whole new tone for what follows. Rather than being told not to resist, the people gathered to hear Jesus are told not to resist violently. Wink goes on to examine the phrase, if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. Why, Wink asks, does Jesus reference the right cheek specifically? The answer is both challenging and enlightening. Jesus lived in a right-handed world where left hands were reserved only for unclean tasks. And I believe I read somewhere or heard somewhere that, the men would sort of wipe off when they went to the bathroom with their left hand, and that was the unclean hand, and that's why you don't want to shake their unclean hand, because they just wipe themselves off after going to the bathroom rather than toilet paper, etc. So I will continue on here. Maybe you can keep that in mind with the whole left hand is unclean, right hand is clean idea. Therefore, we can assume that the person doing the hitting would have used the right hand. The only way to strike someone on the right cheek with your right hand is a backhanded slap. Such a blow connotes an insult, not a fist fight, and was a normal way to reprimand someone over whom you had power, e.g., masters to slaves, husbands to wives, Romans to Jews. To strike your equal in such a manner was socially and legally unacceptable, carrying with it a huge fine. You're welcome. I hope you can keep that in mind when you think about this. So with this new understanding of the context Jesus was speaking in, picture the scenario with yourself as the oppressor. You are a wealthy, powerful person whose slave has displeased you in some way. You reprimand your slave with a backhanded slap. The response you expect is the response you have always received from your slaves. The response you yourself would give is if someone higher than you treated you the same way. You expect your slave to cower, submit, and slink away. Instead, your slave defiantly turns the other cheek and challenges you to hit them again. What can you do? You would like to give your slave another backhanded slap to show them their place. But to do that, you would have to use your left hand, which would admit that your action is unclean. You could hit them on their left cheek instead, but it would be embarrassing to hit your slave the way you would hit your equal. You're confused. You don't know what to do. Flustered, you could order the slave to be flogged, but the slave has already made their point. They have shown you that they are a human person with dignity and worth. You don't own them, you cannot control them, and they do not submit to your rule. And so, in light of Wink's insights, Jesus' instruction was not to resist evil and to turn the other cheek Jesus' instruction not to resist evil and to turn the other cheek transforms from an instruction to accept injustice into a challenge to resist systems of domination and oppression without the use of violence. Rather than ignoring an evil situation and hoping it will go away, Jesus is telling his followers to find creative, active, and nonviolent ways to assert their humanity and God's love in the world. So, oftentimes people, when I say that we're not supposed to be, rejecting the authority that's over us, and we're supposed to, live and let live with other people and not go after and tell people they're of Satan, etc. They'll say, well, you're just being passive, you're just lukewarm, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, etc. And, well, how do you save the world, if you aren't going to rally against the pedophiles in high places, etc.? There's a reason why there are pedophiles in high places. Our Father put them over us. And I'm not going to rally against our Father because, like it says in the Bible, in Acts, it says, if you are going against something and it's of God, nothing you can do is going to be able to withstand it. And that's the whole idea. Why do you think these things are allowed in the first place? Because God has allowed them, etc. It's only, if something is done and it's not the will of God, then it's not going to stand. So if things have gone on and they've just stayed there as, the status quo, we have evil people in the White House and that's the status quo. Well, then that's because it's of God, and how can we change that? Well, like I said, if you change yourself, the inside, if we change the morale or moral compass of the country at large, we're going to get a better ruler. We're going to get somebody in charge who's going to do the things that our Father wants him to do, who's going to set our people free, go, let your people go, right? We're supposed to repent inside, as within, so without. As we, as a nation, increase our moral standards, etc., we're going to get a better leader in front of our country. So we need to understand that what we do is attracting to us, who we are inside. And it's on a minuscule, part, minuscule way. And it's also on a macro scale. We're on the micro scale and the macro scale. You as an individual might not run into bad cops, because you as an individual are very law-abiding, moral, etc. You're not going to run into really bad authority. If you saw my picture on here, it was Cartman from the South Park, respect my authority. And, he's like a cop in that picture, and trying to, have authority over people. And the thing is, if you inside are a moral person, you're not going to run into the authority that's going to beat you down and keep you down, because God is watching over you. The law of attraction, which is God basically, is watching over you. If you are good inside, you're not going to run into these, negative leaders, these negative authority people. If you are negative inside, if you are feeling like everybody's against you and, you think all cops are racist, etc., you're going to start attracting racist cops, or you're going to start attracting the really mean authority people, etc. If you are not doing what's right, you're going to end up with people who are going to treat you the way you're treating other people. That's why Jesus said, treat others as you would want to be treated, because that's the law of the land. If you don't treat people the way you want to be treated, you're going to get treated the same way, because it's a mirror. It's there to purify you. That's this world, the law of attraction, etc., it is God's law. It is the law of the land. It's going to show you who you are inside. And if you are seeing a lot of negative stuff, then you want to take a look inside and start working on yourself. And like I said, this is macro scale and micro scale and macro scale. So the country as a whole, its moral standards are dictating what's happening in the White House. And as we get better and better, more repentant, and continue on with a better moral standard, we're going to get a better White House. We're going to get better leadership. And that's just one macro. If you go even further macro, everybody in the world is creating the world situation. And so we are actually creating the world government, the United Nations, etc. We are creating what they're doing. And if they are going to be negative towards us, if they are going to be restricting us, then we brought that upon ourselves, basically. So what I suggest, back to here, it says, rather than ignoring an evil situation and hoping it will go away, we find creative, active, and nonviolent ways to assert our humanity. So what I suggest is that we work on ourselves. If you can become one with God, if you can get to His way, His frequency of love, loving others as yourself, loving even your enemies, blessing those who curse you, if you can become one with Him, be on that same frequency, and I did a video on that too, and that's in the description box below. If you can become one with Him, then other people will see that in you, and you can actually raise their frequency also. You can get them to become one with Him too. What we do inside is bringing our world to reflect back to us what we are. So if you work on yourself, that is what will create a better state, a better country. And when you create a better country, you're creating a better president. So if you work on yourself, that is how, rejecting sin, repenting of it, moving forward, doing what our Father wants you to do, all of that is your nonviolent way to assert your humanity and God's love in the world. And that is what will bring to you a better president, a better leader, a better country, a better, state government, etc. So we are totally in control because we can actually work on ourselves. We are the ones who can stop sinning. We are the ones who can repent. We are the ones who can call on God to help us through everything so that we can actually be perfect as our Heavenly Father and Heavenly Father is perfect. So as we do that, we are bringing about this better nation, this better world, it's not about inaction, which I've been accused of. I've been accused of being a lukewarm person by saying we're not going to be fighting against that because according to the law of attraction, if you fight against pedophiles, you're creating more pedophiles because you're going to bring that more into your life. If you fight against abortion, you're going to bring more abortion into it because you're attracting what your focus is on. But if you are focused on healing yourself, by law of attraction, you're healing the world. And that's what brings about the better world, of course. And it's not inaction, it's action. Working on yourself is action. Stopping your sinning is action. That is something that you can do to create a better world, a better life. So, yes, we manifest the kingdom that's inside of us. And if you are in, outer darkness inside of you, then that's what you're, reflecting into the world. But if you are in the kingdom, and we enter the kingdom through the pearls, the gates of pearl, which is wisdom, which is the Holy Spirit, which is keeping the law, which is not sinning, etc. When you can enter the kingdom inside of you, then the kingdom is manifested to you. And that's why Jesus said that you don't have to worry about where your bread is coming from. You don't have to worry about your clothes, etc. So long as you focus on doing the kingdom stuff inside of you, you manifest that into the world. So, what we are inside is how our world is manifested. So that we have freedom. Even though there's a lot of people who are, worried that they are, they're worried about giving in to authority. They say that if you are, using a birth certificate, if you're, still, using the all caps name and all that things, they say that you're a dead person or something and that you're still a slave to the government. But you're not a slave to the government if you use your birth certificate, etc. There's a lot of people who actually, they use that stuff and then they get benefits from the country. And they get disability payments or something. They get payments from the country because of what they've done in the past. And why do they get that? Because they themselves are still manifesting that into the world. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter if a birth certificate is there. It doesn't matter if your name is spelled in all caps on a driver's license. You aren't dead. And if you haven't seen my other video on that and you haven't looked into common law and maritime law, then this might not make sense. But it's just a matter of perspective. We are always free, no matter what. If the government is over us, if it's not, if we're using a driver's license and social security card, we're still free because we have the option to work on ourselves inside of us. We always have that option. And you can see my article on I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings for more information on that, on being free. And I'm trying to see if I put that in the chat, and it looks like I didn't. So just hold on a second. So I'm going to get that in there. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Because we are free no matter what. We're always free. I also did a video on this, I believe. So that should be in there. Yeah. And, speaking of the weather, I did a video last year on the hurricane. I actually did a lot of videos on the hurricane last year. And I think that what we are is what will manifest into the world. And if people are going to have a lot of, upsetness with a storm, etc., that they actually attracted that to themselves. And that's why I said God was in charge of this stuff. And if people don't actually, they say the storm is really bad in some places and then it actually isn't, that could be a result of people repenting and praying to God. The people who escaped disaster could be about them calling out to our Father. We have no idea what's going on in people's lives for why that sort of thing has been attracted there. And no matter what, I know that last year there was a lot of people discussing the whole harp thing and, them controlling the weather. And the thing is, our Father, his power, the Spirit, is more powerful than whatever they can do. They can do some sort of setting and create a hurricane, right? But if everybody is not at a place to attract a hurricane, then it's not going to hit them. If they're not spiritually ready to do that because of the law of attraction, it's so powerful, it's just going to repel it, as I discussed in other videos. Our vibe attracts our tribe, our vibe attracts our circumstances, and our vibe will repel those not of our tribe, and our vibe will repel those not of our circumstances. So if we're not feeling like we deserve to get hit with a hurricane, then we're not going to get hit with a hurricane, and it might not be that your location doesn't get hit with a hurricane. It might be that somebody offers you to get out of the state, to spend time with them instead during that time so you don't have to worry about it, etc. So our vibe actually, we can repel a hurricane if people are in the right state of being in themselves. But if they're not, then they're going to attract it, and that is very individual. And it's just that there is an individual part, the microcosm and the macrocosm, right? So, we just need to find his shalom. Everything else is a distraction, and there's also a video on Facebook that I was sharing, a video on YouTube too, of the storm where there's this weatherman who was making it out to be such a big deal. He was pushing against supposedly the wind, except the grass was going in the same direction he was going in. And it was this whole I don't know, dog and pony show, they're making it out to be worse than it is. But the thing is, people who are in a state where they are always focused on things to be fearful of, they're going to watch the TV and they're going to be fearful. They're going to watch the same exact clip and be fearful. Whereas those who are in a state of peace and knowing and understanding, they're going to watch it and laugh because he's, going in the direction of the wind, not against it, And it's just kind of comical as there's two people walking along calmly behind him, and it's really making the rounds. And if I can remember, I'll put the link in the description box below. But the thing is, people attract what they're into. So if somebody's in a fearful state, they're going to watch the exact same clip and be fearful. And if somebody's not, then they're going to watch it and laugh. And it just shows your state of being. And we want to be in a good, happy, healthy, laughing state, etc. Yes. Realizing true reality. Getting into that kingdom inside of us and understanding we can see the kingdom, in front of us and understand that we are the ones with the power. Submitting to authority is not, it's not, submitting to anything other but God, So he's the one who put the leaders in charge of us. He's the one who put the United States in charge of us. We attracted the fact that we're in the United States right now because we're here, or if you're not, then you attracted the fact that you're not in the United States right now, People are where they are meant to be at this moment in time. And if you change your frequency, if you don't like it, you're going to see the world around you change, or you're going to end up in a different location because you're going to match a different frequency. So we are, this world is a manifestation of what we are. And so to reject the authority over us, to reject Donald Trump as, an evil person or something, or to reject Hillary if she had been our president, etc. That is just to reject God in our world, because it would be a manifestation of us inside. It's to reject ourselves, truly, because if you reject the rulership over you, it's a reflection of who you are inside, so you're rejecting who you are inside. The only way you can actually become one with yourself and one with God is to accept who you are, and you can change yourself to become one with God, and then you'll see the world as he sees it. But there's people out there seeing the world as he sees it in the exact same world as another person who sees the world as complete, horrible, awful hell on earth, etc. So it's a matter of perspective. It's not a different world. It's just a matter of your, dimension or frequency or whatever. Somebody can be in the exact same world and see it as hell, and you see it as heaven. Personally, I see it as heaven right now because I know that we are free because we have the ability to create the world around us. And if we have the ability to create the world around us, how could we possibly be a slave to anybody else? We can't be. So it just makes no sense. So we are the people in charge of this world. So if you reject authority, if you reject the world, you're rejecting yourself because it's a reflection of who you are. If you reject, somebody bossing you around, you're rejecting this manifestation of who you are inside right now. If you reject who you are inside right now, if you don't like what the world looks like, then what you want to do is change yourself to be more like God, because that's how you're going to enjoy the world more. And that's what we have to do. I'm going to continue on here. I just definitely wanted to talk about that idea about the turning the other cheek, etc. So continuing on with some verses from the Bible that talk about the powers and all that stuff. Romans 13:1, let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power resisteth the ordinance of God. So they're rejecting God if you resist the authority. And they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for convenience sake. So concerning the abortions, I just had a thought here, and the people who are having abortions, who are taking the money from the government, etc., with the taxes, they're the ones that are attracting the evil to them for doing the evil that they are doing. The people who are physically doing the abortions, they're attracting the evil for doing the abortions, etc. And they're the ones who are going to be punished for accepting money from the government, from other people's taxes to do that. They're the ones who are attracting that wrath, not the people who are paying the taxes on their end, And the people that are paying for this stuff, like I said, same thing. They're attracting the evil that's going to be done to them for doing that. But it's the people who do evil that are the ones attracting the evil. It's not the people that are doing good. The wrath is for those who are specifically doing evil. Our Father knows our hearts. And really, if we're one with God, and we don't have to worry about where that money is going, because He knows that that's not where we would spend that money. And if that's not where you would spend that money, that's not your frequency. That's not your way of being. But if that's where you would spend your money for abortions, then that is your frequency. That is your way of being. And because of that frequency that you would spend people's money on abortions, then you're going to attract the negative connotations to that. You're going to attract the, disregard for life. You're going to attract the death into your life, etc., if that is what you're doing. So it's about your frequency. And if you are, paying taxes with a frequency would say, I would never spend money on abortions, they're just asking for this money, then God knows that. He's the one who's in charge, and He knows that the punishments are going for those who would have their money go for taxes and for abortions, if the tax money would go for abortions. And if nobody in this country right now would spend their tax money on abortions, then that would probably stop. That it would probably just stop. They wouldn't be asking for it anymore. They wouldn't be paying for it anymore. And if I recall correctly, something was done about that anyway. I don't remember the exact thing about that, but Planned Parenthood can't use the money for abortions or something now anyway. I forget how that worked out, but they can't tell people to do it or something. And then they got really upset about that. Unless things have changed, that actually was kind of handled in the past. I'll have to look around and see if I can find that link. If I can, I'll put that in the description box below too later on. All right, continuing on. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are God's ministers. So tribute, pay them your tax money. For they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. Owe no man anything but to love one another. For he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness. Thou shalt not covet, and if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in saying this, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. So the whole point, why is this put together? So some people would take this totally out of context, and they would say, give tribute to the people that are asking for tribute. Pay your taxes to those who are asking for your taxes. And then they totally forget that it says, don't break the law. Continue loving. Love is the fulfillment of the law. This is agape love, loving one another as yourself. And the reason these things are together is because if you do love one another as yourself, then it doesn't matter if there's people over dominion over you. They're ministers of God. The authority over you is ministering to you as God is ministering to you. If you are in a good state, the government is going to pay you, or they're not going to ask for your taxes. Honestly, I really haven't actually been asked for taxes for a long time, but I think if the time comes, then it doesn't matter anymore, because what tax money you pay into the government, God is making sure that that money or that frequency is going to attract good things into your life. If somebody's paying in a negative frequency and they're giving this money in a negative frequency, then God's going to make sure that you attract the negative frequency connotations to that in your life. It's all about where your frequency is, where you're at. God is in charge of where the money goes, what it actually pays for, and understand, if you pay money to the government, and you wouldn't do abortions and you wouldn't pay for war, then your money is probably going to go to the poor. Maybe it's going towards food stamps for somebody who is loving God but just needs those food stamps to get by for their children. Because God knows where your heart is, and that's where it's going to go. He's going to take care of that. It's the law of attraction. It has to work that way. And thank you for the happy birthday wishes. I know I said that last week. Today was my birthday, yes. And I'm glad that it's sort of explaining it to you, because I don't want you to feel bad about it. And I know there's a lot of people who do feel bad about it, who do feel that like conscience whenever they pay taxes. And I don't want you guys to feel bad about that. There's a reason why this stuff is in the Bible, and it's not because whoever wrote the Bible was trying to get you to be a slave. It's complete freedom. Freedom. I mean, if you are the one who is in a good state inside of yourself and you are paying taxes for a good purpose, it's going to the authority over you, and that authority over you is a manifestation of who you are inside, and that authority over you is going to bless you in ways that you don't even know, because maybe it is blessing somebody else out there who's poor and in need of food stamps and in need of whatever. And Father is the one who's in charge of making sure that happens. And the people who are in need are going to be in a frequency that will receive that, what they're in the need of or whatever, if they're in a good state with God. And if they're not, if they're repelling it, then they're repelling it. And that isn't on you that they're repelling it. I heard one time there was a country, I think they were damaged by like a hurricane or something. And Trump sent a bunch of water, like bottled water. And then the leader, whoever, just put it away, and they never actually passed it out so that they could make Trump look bad for not giving water or something like that. That country just sort of, it attracted or repelled, let's say, repelled anything that was good to them because of the state of being of their authority. And like I said, they are the ones who were manifesting the authority over them. So that's why they repelled the water, etc. So we are the ones who would repel or attract what our circumstances are. And thank you for the happy birthday wishes. Janet, it all started when they weren't happy with the Father as their king. We are still reaping those consequences. Yeah. But we personally will not be reaping those consequences if we have accepted Father as our king of our hearts. And that is something you can do today. It's not something that you have to wait for the rest of the world to do, because on a microcosm, you are going to see that stuff in your world. So, if you work on yourself, then maybe your town sort of gets brought up to a good frequency also. And like I said, the police officers that maybe they would have pulled somebody else over, but they're not going to pull you over because you're in a good frequency and you're repelling an authority that would pull you over, etc. I remember one time being in the car with my dad, and I was just in such a good mood with the whole law of just new to the law of attraction and all that sort of stuff, and the whole sending the message and all that. And got pulled over for speeding because I was trying to get somewhere fast. And I wasn't the one driving, but regardless. So the cop comes over, and I did that whole, Star Wars thing. These are not the droids you're looking for. In my head, visualizing it. And he let us go, and we just went with a warning. And the thing is, you can attract which cop is going to be there, which one is going to give you a warning, which one is going to not pull you over just because you're in a good frequency and you're repelling that, and it doesn't mean that you can go and disobey all the laws or whatever, but that some laws are just, nobody's going to obey them or whatever. I'm not saying to just do every single thing the government says you should do, etc., but you're not going to be forced to do things that you don't want to do if you're in a good state of being in yourself, in your personal self, your spirit, your kingdom of heaven that's inside of you. If you're in a good state inside of you, you're going to bring that about in the world. It's not, it's not something we should be blaming other people about, etc. There's so many people who sort of say you should reject authority, and it's not biblical to reject authority. It's everything that's authority wise is just ourselves and God basically manifesting in our world. And that's why we want to accept it and do what it says, because it's God's manifestation to you, basically, of where you were. You know, if you get a reprimand, if somebody sent you a fee for doing something negative, you know, you attracted that somehow, you know, or if there's a fee and, you know, it just pops up, you get a tax, you know, and you have to pay this tax and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to pay this tax. What did I do to bring about this tax? And if you can get into a good state with the Father and understand everything's taken care of as long as you're seeking the kingdom of heaven, then the money will come and it will be paid for. It doesn't mean that the taxes won't come or that the fine won't be there, but that the money will be paid for, because Father will bring it into your life because you're already in a state of being one with the Father, you know. I'll continue on here. Jeremiah 25:4. And Yahweh hath sent unto you all his servants the prophets, rising early and sending them. But ye have not hearkened nor inclined your ear to hear. They said, Turn ye again now every one from his evil way, and from the evil of your doings, and dwell in the land that Yahweh hath given unto you and to your fathers forever and ever. And go not after other gods to serve them, and to worship them, and provoke me not to anger and the works of your hands. And I will do you no hurt. Yet ye have not hearkened unto me, saith Yahweh, that ye might provoke me to anger and the works of your hands to your own hurt. To your own hurt. You notice it's not, they often spoke about Yahweh as doing this and doing that as like punishing people, but it's the law of attraction. You know, they were doing things with their own works that led to their own hurt. And then they called it Yahweh. And yeah, it is, because the law of attraction is Yahweh, basically. It's the word that the world was created by. But it was because of their own works that they got the punishment, basically. And so it says, Therefore thus saith Yahweh of hosts, because ye have not heard my words, behold, I will send and take all the families of the north, saith Yahweh, and Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon, my servant, and will bring them against this land and against the inhabitants thereof, and against all these nations round about, and will utterly destroy them and make them an astonishment and an hissing and perpetual desolations. Moreover, I will take from them the voice of mirth, the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom, and the voice of the bride, the sound of millstones, and the light of the candle. And this whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. And the reason they served for 70 years and the mirth was taken out was because of their own actions. But the thing is, if you repent and don't do those bad actions, then you're going to have a good king. See, it's the law of attraction, and it's in the Bible, and it's not, you know, it's not some negative thing. It's just the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you are in a bad state, you're going to get a bad leader to reap what you sow. Continuing on, Jude 1:8. Likewise, also these filthy dreamers defile the flesh, despise authority. So these people despise authority and speak evil of dignities and or angels or ministers, as the other verse had said they were ministers of us. Yet Michael the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, durst not bring against him a rallying accusation, but said, Yahweh rebuke you. So we're not supposed to say, like, the Lord rebuke you. The angels didn't say, we're not supposed to say, that somebody's of Satan or something. We're supposed to say that the Father is the one who's going to rebuke people. So don't say, you're rebuked, I rebuke you or whatever. Say Yahweh rebuke you, because I had people rebuking me left and right in the past for things I've said, and we're not supposed to do that, because our Father's the one who's in charge of everybody. He's the one who does the rebuking. And of course, like I said, that's the law of attraction, and that's why we don't have to worry about it. Like I talked about the pedophiles and the murderers, the rapists, etc. I don't have to worry about what they're doing, because guess what? Yahweh's rebuking them. They're already punished. Jesus was sent in the world not to condemn, but to save the people, because the world was condemned already. Yahweh's already rebuking them. Yahweh's already condemning people. And, it's not our job to be in charge of what they do and whatnot. But this is the point here. Jude is talking about people who despise authority as very negative because they're despising Yahweh, basically, because Yahweh is the one who put the authority in charge. 2 Peter 2:9. The Lord knoweth how to deliver the godly out of temptation, and to reserve the unjust unto the day of judgment to be punished, but chiefly them that walk after the flesh in the lust of uncleanness and despise government. Presumptuous are they, self-willed. They are not afraid to speak evil of dignities. Once again, these people are speaking evil of the dignities like the president or the kings. Whereas angels, which are greater in power and might, bring not railing accusation against them before the Lord or before Yahweh. But these, as natural brute beasts, made to be taken and destroyed, speak evil of the things that they understand not. So there's a lot of people who reject the president, the United Nations, the corporation. They reject things they don't understand. And they go against authority. And they don't understand that actually the Father is the one who put all that stuff in charge. He's the one who laid it all out. And I've also said this in the past, Yahweh is the creator of the New World Order. And then people say, well, now you're saying Yahweh's evil. Like, no, I'm not saying Yahweh's evil. He brought the New World Order together to punish those who would do wrong. It says that he gathers the nations to pour out his wrath. And he gathers the nations that are, evil inside for the wrath to come on those who are evil inside. It's the law of attraction. They're the ones that are bringing it upon themselves. It's not necessarily that he's the one doing this evil thing. It's just the way the world was built. It was built upon the word, which I believe is the law of attraction. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you are bad and negative, etc., you're going to attract bad and negative things into your life. So, this verse goes on and on and on. It's talking about these are wells without waters, clouds that are carried with a tempest. And it goes back to talking about them as dogs turn to their own vomit and the sow wallowing in the mire and all that. This is talking about people who despise government and speak evil of dignitaries. And I know there's a lot of people who would say that we are supposed to reject the government over us and, follow after Yahweh. But it's not two separate things. Yahweh's the one who put the government over us. It's only when we repent that we see a change in our world. And so like Moses, he had the people, they were supposed to be repentant, and then they got led out. They were repentant, and then they followed the commands, and then they got led out, and then they had to not just go into the promised land right away, but they had to fast. They had to, stop eating meat, etc. They had to go through this process of detoxification, spiritual and physical, before they could go into the promised land. And even that really didn't work for a lot of them. A lot of them ended up dead. They ate the quail and ended up dead. They ended up where they couldn't even enter into the promised land just because they had to wander for 40 years and just were dying off and everything. So we have to be repentant, then we have to follow the commands, and then we can enter the promised land, which of course I've talked about before, all those parallels. But so we aren't supposed to rebel against the authority that's over us. We're supposed to repent personally inside, and then the Father leads us into the promised land, into the kingdom of heaven, into having this world be the heaven that it should be around us. John 19:10. So Pilate said to him, "Do you refuse to speak to me? Do you not know that I have authority to release you and authority to crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You would have no authority over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of greater sin." Jesus said that Pilate had no authority over him. Our President of the United States, Donald Trump, has no authority over you. Our government has no authority over you. As I discussed in my past video where I read from this book, thank you very much for the person who gave it to me. Our authority of the government is actually nothing. It's a superstition. It's just imaginary. It doesn't actually exist. They have no authority over us. we have all authority over us. We are the ones who can decide if we're going to be a slave or not. If we change who we are inside, then we will manifest the authority over us on the outside. They're just ministering for the Father. The president, the Congress, etc. They're just a reflection of who we are. And that's why if you are one with the Father, everything is going to go well for you. If you are not one with the Father, then they are going to do negative things to you, because that's the Father's authority in your life. That's a manifestation of who you are inside yourself. So I hope you enjoyed that discussion on authority. Are there any comments or questions on my beliefs on that? So like I said, I know people have this sort of mixed up, and they're saying that they're supposed to reject everything. And I learned about the deception of, common law versus maritime law and all that stuff years ago, as I discussed in the previous video. But, it's not something to focus your life on. There's nothing that you need to focus on anything more than working on yourself inside, who you are spiritually inside, because that's the kingdom of heaven that's inside of you. And if you do that, everything else falls into place. So, there's no need to worry about authority over you. We don't need to worry about what people are doing there, because we're going to attract, I don't really believe in a need to vote even, because we're going to attract what we're going to attract, right? I mean, people will vote because they think that they can, should, whatever. But our Father is still going to put into place whoever we as a nation attracted, spiritually speaking. And maybe Hillary Clinton didn't know. I don't know if it was a big show about who was going to win, etc. But maybe she really didn't know, because maybe it was our spiritual state of being that we attracted Donald Trump. It could be. A prayer is not something that you just say. It's how you feel inside, What you believe inside is what you attract. And somehow we attracted Donald Trump. Somehow we attracted the government that we have right now. And if you don't like it, then work on yourself. Because when you work on yourself, you're going to attract a better government. So that's really my thoughts on it. I think that I'll end it. Thank you again for all the birthday wishes, everybody. Thanks for all the presents and everything. And I hope you all enjoyed this, like I said. And it's very interesting. I think you guys basically have attracted this subject because I was sent the book. I was sent a video that I just shared on my video playlist or whatever about authority this morning. I'll put this into a playlist about authority, but I think you guys sort of attracted this discussion personally because it just sort of fell into my lap. So thank you all. I hope you enjoyed it, and Shabbat Shalom, everybody.